Elton John said the circle of life. We're going to talk about the circle of wealth, but not that circle of wealth. Here we go. Welcome back to another great episode where we dive into the history, the future, the now, and then on the Banking Bros podcast. I'm Jay Dew.
And I'm Jonah.
And you can find us at The Banking Bros on TikTok, on Instagram, and of course right here on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces as we walk and talk you through how to create code-cracking cash flow conversations for your community.
That's right. And if you follow us on all those platforms, we'll give you a big old round of applause because we're appreciative for you. And maybe we'll even shout you out in one of our episodes like we do so often. So just so you know, you started this episode with talking a little about Elton John, and I thought for sure you were going to say something goofy, but it sounded to be fine.
Well, I'm trying to always relate those intro hooks to what we're getting into. And it's not the circle of wealth concept is a concept that surrounds people who teach what we preach.
That's right.
And today, the circle of wealth that we're talking about is actually keeping a dollar within your own community. That's what we're going to talk about.
It's a big deal.
It is a big deal, but I had no idea a few years ago when we started what that could mean.
I try my best to do this after I learned about it. There's actually a local ice cream shop in my town.
This is your best example?
Yeah, because they have a sign.
Oh, what does it say?
You'll have to, so I think I've got a picture of it, but I wasn't prepared to scroll through the phone and throw it up real quick. So I'll look for it during the episode, and if I can find it, I'll throw it up on the screen for everybody who's watching, and I'll read it for everybody who's listening. But off the top of my head, it literally says, "We only accept cash in this restaurant." And the reason for it is, or this ice cream shop, and the reason for it is, they talk about fees on this piece of paper, right? They say, like, if you use your card, Visa gets 25 cents, and this person gets 25 cents, and the transaction fee gets, and by the time that we get it, still in your community, your $1 is only 50 cents for us. So that you're devaluing the money because it's spread out as opposed to going to us.
Right,
and then we buy all of our produce and everything like that locally. And so it doesn't help anybody for you to be able to use cards or whatever here. So we only take cash because of that reason. It's like a whole plaque they got right at the register.
I feel like we need to call these people and have them on our show.
It's a pretty good, and they got pretty good ice cream.
Right. Well, and hopefully they bring a pint. What do you have over there?
I normally get the peach ice cream. I'm a big peach fan, but they only have that seasonal because peaches only grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Millions of peaches. Peaches for me.
I wonder if they get their peaches down in Georgia. That's
got my peaches down in
Justin
Georgia.
Bieber instead of Elton John. But
now I went all the way back. Which song was I doing?
No idea.
Because I'm older than you. Okay. Presidents of the United States of America. You don't remember them?
No, that's a group.
Yep.
I mean, I know it's a group, but
our producer Will over here he's messing with you again. I can't hear him exactly, but that's 2 episodes straight. Ladies and gentlemen, on our last episode, at least in the recording structure, we talked about then till now. And this episode, we're going to talk about now to then. There, he put it up in there. Peaches, song by the presidents of the United States of America.
why would they name their group that?
Nobody knows.
Okay.
All right, but we're going to talk about now till then and a community 104 years ago that was completely massacred that took the money out of the circle of their community and took that peach ice cream money and sent it to somewhere else. You've heard of it because if you like what we're doing, you probably realize that we're talking about generational wealth quite frequently.
Yep.
And over the last several years, we're talking about the craziness of 2020 and the pandemic. We hit this big anniversary in 2021, May 31st to June 1, 1921, 100 years plus ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was the other side of the tracks. And it wasn't what you were thinking. The other side of the tracks was a thriving, black, wealthy community. And it was called Greenwood. Greenwood, Oklahoma, a suburb of Tulsa, was where the black folks had it going on in business. People were looking good, feeling good, smelling good, and they had their economy really buzzing.
Yep.
Okay, you know it and I know it probably more colloquially as Black Wall Street.
Okay.
So Booker T. Washington Of course, he had Tuskegee. He shouted out to this community, Greenwood, as Black Wall Street because the money was really happening. Jonah, help us understand, what does it mean to have the money in the community?
Yeah, so
in that context, we got peaches down in Georgia.
Yeah. So I'll give you like the little example. The example here is whatever your necessity is. Let's talk about a haircut. You need to go get a haircut. Your options are to go to the next town over to the person who's got the big haircut shop or whatever, pay them. Or you can go next door or in your town or in your community to get the haircut. So now your dollar passed to your neighbor, to your family member, to your cousin's friend, whoever, to your church leader. That's where your dollar went. And then when they got your dollar for the haircut, they, of course, need to go buy whatever, groceries.
Yep.
But they went to the local grocer.
Okay.
So your dollar went to the haircut person. The haircuts person's dollar went right back to your mother, brother, cousin, sister, church friend who owned the grocery store. Now the dollar is there. So the dollar is staying in the community. Now with that dollar, they need to go do whatever in the world they
Go
need
to
to
the
go do.
go to the show, go to the theater.
Show, but they went to the show in the town.
Yep.
So who's in the show in the town? Who are the actors? It's your family members, it's your neighbors, it's your people that you go to church with, school with, whatever. And so the dollar ends up staying in the community. And that's a really, really, really big deal. That's what I was talking about with the ice cream shop earlier. They're talking about, dollars can't leave. It doesn't help anybody if the dollars leave the community.
Very interesting.
Our community will thrive and get better if the dollars stay here.
Right. So that's what we're talking about here. Many of us know that on that specific date, the community was completely decimated by a racial riot. The mob that was in the greater Tulsa community had gotten sparked by one of those lynching situations, right? Did he do it? Did he not do it? And over the course of the next couple of days or whatever, they came in and they just went ham.
Yep.
On these black folks. And according to the numbers here, what I'm seeing is in this about 40 square blocks of black community on the other side of the train tracks where the black people were, about 1,000 homes and 600 businesses were basically razed to the ground. Wild, because about 300 people were killed and survivors were put in camps. They were locked up, put in camps and things like that. Very tragic experience and quite well documented because, one, the community was so affluent prior to this. They had photography studios. They had theaters. They had barbershops. They had grocery stores. They had surgeons. There was like 10 surgeons in this community. This was a thriving place. So there is media. This is the emerging media section of, the beginnings of Hollywood and stuff like that. So they had cameras, and you can see these people looking fresh. Right? They're looking really good in some of these videos. You can see them on YouTube. And what we're here to talk about is not really the racial tension. Obviously, that was there. But it's the economic impact of now the dollars have to leave the community. And that's really important, as you've heard why. So what happened prior to this time? Ladies and gentlemen, a little history. Once the Emancipation Proclamation came into the game, 1863, freed enslaved peoples in the southern states, in the rebelling states, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into all that. I'm not here to word police you exactly, but I'm trying to say it well. What happened then is these people who were formerly enslaved, what they ended up doing was congregating in certain sections of town. Yep. All over the country, right? And so you've got these boroughs, as we'd call them in New York today, where the Italians live with the Italians, the black folks live with the black folks, things like that, right? The Jews are hanging out with the Jews. All that type of stuff started happening. And of course, there was over time, starting later, 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, if I'm saying it right, where it was separate but equal. So these people started to separate, and they had economic walls that wouldn't let them go cross the border into another community. Right. So as we're learning, as we are reading books, having our own schools, having our own churches, we start to have an economy. And so these people started to flourish because they realized the dollars can't and shouldn't, and in some cases, they're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to use them in other places. Right. So when the money starts circulating really well in that community, everyone gets richer. Jonah, at this point, we have a question for our audience out there that we need you to answer. What's the difference between a dollar, a note, and wealth? Explain the contrast or the similarities. Are they the same thing? Is the dollar the wealth?
They are not. So here's the way.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, here's the way that I'd explain it, right? It's the dollar is the means of exchange. It's the currency. That's all it is, right? So I could have a pocket full of money right now, but if my pockets are sewed shut, zip tied shut, what is a pocket full of money going to help me with? I don't actually want a pocket full of money if that's the case.
Right.
What I want is a pocket full of money with an opening at the top, so I can reach in that pocket and I can actually transfer the money for the other things that I want and need. And so here's what happens, right? If I transfer all the money to you for something that I needed from you, and you transfer all the money back to me for something that you needed from me, and we continue that in our community, we've got the ability to grow and flourish. It's like this rising tide raises all ships mentality, as opposed to I go transfer that money to the big box chain, the other community, the other people who are not going to return the favor. Well, all the money that I earned just left. It's never coming back, which means I have to continue earning in order to get it back. Because I've got nobody who's going to reach back out to me to say, hey, let me make your life better and buy your products and services and increase your lifestyle. I don't have anybody that's going to do it. That forces me to always earn because I've never got any cash flow going in and out. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode, right? And so there's a difference between wealth and just having a dollar. Wealth is going to be this idea of cash flow moving in and out, currency exchange, business and business procedures and products moving. That's going to create wealth for you. If you've always got opportunity, you're going to be a lot more wealthy than the person who does not have opportunity.
I think that's a great way to put it. And like I said, this is not something that I spent very much time thinking about. Growing up in a 20th and 21st century America, I'm spending all my money, unless I live in a small town, which I did from time. Yeah, I'm spending it at Walmart, right? I'm spending my dollars at those big box chains. We got McDonald's, we got Walmart, and things like that.
These days we got Amazon like crazy, right?
Yeah. And so the money leaves the community. What's interesting about what happened to Black Wall Street in the Tulsa community is we got 3 bullet points here. With no businesses left, money was forced to leave the community, and you explained that, and survivors had to shop elsewhere.
Yep.
So now if and when they get money, they've got to send it out. There's no businesses.
If your theaters got burned down and you want to go to the theater, well, guess where you're putting your ticket money?
Right.
In which theater?
The next town the next community.
If your haircut place, your barbershop got burned down, now there's no place to get your hair cut. Well, guess where you're spending your barbershop money?
And now that barber in a different community or locale or a different ethnic group in this case, he was able to move the money within his community, but not spend it or send it back to you because you have no commerce and no economy. They burned everything down.
Right.
Big deal. Redlining policies in the 1930s through the 1960s, where the city governments, the councils, the banks redrew lines about where we were allowed to loan money or not. Changed, right? Urban renewal in the mid-1900s demolished what remained of black neighborhoods for highways, right? Yep. So if you can't get your cars and your transportation and your trucks into those communities, now you don't have any grocery.
Now we can't drop stuff off.
Right. Very, very interesting. So what I wanted to focus on in this episode was comparing that case study. Very popular. People know about it. In the Black Wall Street community. A survivor of the craziness wrote a book. I just learned about this book, so I'm going to have to, let me shout out to this book because I'm definitely going to have to read it and do something about it in a teaching topic, I think. The Nation Must Awake. Mary E. Jones Parrish. Okay. She was there. She wrote a book shortly afterward, and we've still got that. So it's one of the best first-hand accounts and eyewitness stuff that we've got around what happened. What happens in the future? What happens if your dollars leave that community. There was the man who started the Greenwood community. I can't think of his name right now.
Okay.
And it's attributed to like him and one business partner, and they kind of knew each other. In about 1905, 1906, oil had come to Oklahoma.
Okay.
And so that's going to boom things. Right now we can move stuff around. People want oil and
because
all that stuff.
All the businesses are coming, all the people are coming, all that, right?
Yep.
So
there's segregation. So there's a white section of town and there's a black section of town, but the oil is there. So rising tide raises all ships. Well, they started, and he had I believe it was a hotel. And at the time, about 1920, 1921, his hotel was valued at about $75,000.
Okay.
Today's money, it's over $2.5 million.
That's a lot.
But if it's gone, think about the economic impact 100 years later.
It's big time.
Big time.
That'd be one of the biggest hotel chains and brands that we've got, probably.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, if he had spread it out and things like that. Really interesting. So, Jonah, you give us the comparison. We did this in the last episode as we talked about Benjamin Franklin. But give us the comparison of the infinite banking concept. When we're talking about what we call the save and spend system, how does the economic impact or lack thereof of what has happened in this Tulsa example kind of parallel with moving money around in this save and spend system?
Yeah, so it's a little bit to the example that I mentioned before. So let's use this gentleman who owned this hotel, for instance, right? Oil comes to town, which means people are coming. People have to work the oil shafts and mines and all that fun. I don't know much about oil, but there's jobs surrounding that, which means they need to sleep somewhere.
Yep.
If they have to sleep somewhere and they don't have family in town or a place to go, or there's not a camp or whatever it is that's big enough for them, they're probably going to use a hotel. If you own a hotel in that time, that means that my revenue went up because now I've got customers to stay here. If you're committed to building up your community, when I make more money as the hotel owner, I'm also going to go to the local grocery store to buy more items for the breakfasts and for the lunches and for the dinners.
Right.
And I need more pillows and more blankets and more sheets and everything. So I'm spending all this money locally, and then increasing the revenue streams of all those people who make those products, the pillows and the blankets and the soaps and whatever, right? So everything's going up. Of course, the pillows and the blankets and the soap people need to eat, so they're going to go to shop at the local grocery store. The grocery store's revenue is going to go up. The grocery store people need places to stay and shows to watch and haircuts, like we've talked about. So this entire idea of rising tide raises all ships is exactly what's happening. The cool part about that, of course, is that money is moving. So we talk about this. We talked about it just a little bit in the last episode. We'll talk about it again now. You do not make any money if money sits still. This is a fallacy that has been taught and caught and preached these days, and it's just completely incorrect. You cannot put your dollars in shoe boxes under the mattress or even in banks and expect the money to just multiply. That is not how this works.
I definitely thought it worked like that until I started thinking as an adult.
I absolutely would agree with you. I thought that's how it worked. You know this to be true. Don't let anyone tell you any different. If you set the money under your mattress for a week, for a month, for a year, you come back in a week, in a month, or a year. Did it multiply? No. If it doesn't move, it doesn't multiply. So even at your local institution where they've tricked you into thinking that it multiplies by you sitting it there, that is not what they're doing with the money on the back end. Right. They have to move it. Money that sits does not move. So now we've got all this movement in town, and we are creating revenue. We're creating more income for everyone around us. How it relates to the infinite banking concept is the same. As an infinite banker, Nelson Nash teaches you, and we teach you to move the money. The money's got to move. There's a very a popular quote. It's not that popular, but it's popular with us, with someone that helped us understand the infinite banking concept. And they call the money the little green men. And she always asks, are the little green men working? Right? And the reason that she does that is she's saying, is the money moving? If you've got all this money sitting around, it's not moving for you. It's not doing anything. You can go give back. You can go invest. You can go do all these things with the money to make it move, which is then going to, of course, get you the return, make it grow. Yep. And that's what we teach people with the infinite banking concept. We're not going to let the money sit still any longer, cross our fingers, and hope someone else makes a lot of money with it because they're moving.
Most people do that, obviously, because in our country today, the qualified plan seems to be king with most working adults.
And people think these qualified plans, I'm going to go off on a little, my soapbox here. People think these qualified plans, one, have been around a long time. They have not. One of the most popular qualified plans I hear about these days is the Roth IRA.
Right, because that one doesn't have a taxable hit later.
Roth IRA is not older than me. Roth IRA came around in 1997. People don't realize that. That means your parents, your grandparents, when they started, this didn't exist. They made this up. So if people are just making it up, you should probably go read what's going on about it.
Well, here's what I would say.
And figure it out. But
who's making it up?
Right.
Who's making
These are called government-sponsored plans.
There we go.
So I'm going to go with the federal government. Take that as you will, because they do lots of things that people think are crazy. They also do lots of things that we like when they announced it, and then 2 years later we hate, right? That's the standard with them. You should probably go figure out what they're doing with the money and how they're moving it, because sitting it doesn't help us, right?
Right.
And they're not sitting it. That's not what happens. But I'm off my soapbox now. Anyway, go ahead.
So I want to ask you this question. What do you think about when I talk to people in this last week? I have cash consultations on a weekly basis. So do you. And those are absolutely free for our listeners out there who want to have a conversation with a coach who actually practices moving money in a controlled, compounding, and tax efficient or free environment.
Yep.
Okay. So here's the question. Let's relate it back to the community of Tulsa, Oklahoma. In those early stages of the Greenwood community before it was just decimated and devastated. Here's the question, Jonah. I think many people who we coach and talk to don't realize that they should be moving their money from their policies within their own community.
Yep.
Because this is the question that I asked. I just want to hear your take on it because I say it to people on these cash coaching calls very recently, is who do you think, if you have a guaranteed, growing, income tax-free, liquid environment for money where you can be the bank, who do you think your kids should be borrowing from for their cars and their education?
It's probably you. I think that's probably the answer.
Here's my question. Do you think that most of the infinite banking community out there, day 1 or day 100 as we work with them, realize that?
I don't.
And why is that?
Well, I think that there's this idea, we talked about it in the last episode, about thinking long range that people need to do. Secondly, I think there's this education limitation. A lot of people don't go through their life looking to learn new things. And so you get to this, I believe there's a law or a rule, I'll think of it in just a moment, but they get to this stage of, okay, I've understood enough about infinite banking, but I don't need to continue learning.
The arrival syndrome.
Yeah, they don't need to continue learning, and that's just false. You've got to keep immersing yourself in learning about what you're doing in the product. Now, some things, I agree with you, don't require continual learning, right? If you're really, really, really interested in how televisions work, you can probably go from zero to hero relatively quickly. And there's probably not much for you to continue to learn unless they come out with new models and new, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I see what point you're trying to make.
But there's other aspects of life that you can always continue to learn about. And one of those is how to be efficient, how to provide, how to give, how to invest with your dollars and with your money. There are people out there and groups out there who invest differently, and they believe in that with everything they got, and they invest differently in so many different areas. And so if you go, I finally learned about how to invest in real estate using this method, using the Burr method, I don't need to learn the other ones. Like that's just goofy.
Sure.
You might go, oh my goodness, this other one makes so much more sense for what I like to do. Maybe safety, liquidity, taxes, whatever, easier to understand. And then, but if you don't stop, if you stop learning, you're not going to pick up on it.
Agreed. Right? Agreed. I think folks out there who are considering utilizing the save and spend system, want to get into infinite banking and want to talk to a coach about it, should think a little bit past their current issues and challenges. Right. A lot of people are trying to get out of debt. A lot of people are trying to plan for a new big purchase, maybe a car or a house very soon, or an investment. I get that. What they miss out on is all the money leaving their circle and moving on across the train tracks because their family members and close associates are not practicing this.
Yep.
So they're paying for something and they're able to recapture and recycle this money for themselves in their personal economy, but they're not actually winning with their closest family members. Yep. Because we haven't spread this idea of banking to their spouse or their children or their parents.
That's right.
So we want to remind everybody that your folks out there all owe money to Wells Fargo, City Chase, PNC, RBC. All of them owe Bank of America money. They shouldn't be paying those dollars. If you believe in your own personal banking strategy, they shouldn't be paying those dollars elsewhere. You should be talking to them about the idea of having your hotel, bolstered by the textile lady who's across the street who can make the pillows and blankets. You should actually be transacting with the people in your local economy and environment. So think about that right there. I know some of y'all ain't ready for that, but I think it's a big, big deal. And even within our family, we've started to do this with our business partners. We've started to loan and lend money for short-term bursts back and forth, for cars, for opportunities, for flips in our own community. We've done all that type of stuff on a private money deal on a personal level, right? There's a lot less paperwork if I need $5,000 from you than if I needed $5,000 for an opportunity at the bank. A lot less paperwork.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we want to shout out to our fan follow of the week.
Big shout out to Tiger Dan, one of our recent YouTube subscribers. Tiger Dan, appreciate you. So I wonder if he, is like Tiger King.
Is Tiger Dan? Well, he's working on it. He's just Dan right now.
Okay.
Like he's got to go to Tyler Duke and then Tyler Court Jester. He's got to work himself up.
Work him way out. But anyway, Tiger Dan, we appreciate the follow, the subscribe over on that platform. If you are not subscribed to us just yet on YouTube, you should absolutely do so. We are found there at The Banking Bros. That's the name of our YouTube channel. You can also find us on TikTok, on Instagram, on X, on LinkedIn. You can find us a lot of different places. But we'd be more than happy to not only answer your questions, but we'd be more than happy to give you a shout out. If you can give us a follow, leave us a comment, let us know you did it, and we'll find you. We'll answer your questions. We'll respond to you, that sort of thing. So we really appreciate you, Tiger Dan, and hopefully we're shouting somebody else out new next week.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, think about your legacy and your future. If you can keep the dollars growing and cash flowing in your own personal economy and larger economy of your community, what happens in 104 years from now? It's not just about today, but we can play the long game for our future posterity. Unfortunately, some people were not economically able to do that, but you can by employing IBC. Talk to you soon.
Now tuned to the banking bros. Said we couldn't make it, drink or settle. This the life we chose. Gave a lot of game, we never got a lot of things. Bow your head and say the prayer. We taught you how to be the bank.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Banking Bros podcast, you are going to love Infinite Bankers. It is a private Facebook community of all of people just like you all across the country who want to know and grow a little bit more in their financial education. So please go ahead and opt in, answer the questions, and we'll talk to you there, not just on a podcast where we talk at you, but we'll talk to you and with you. Our community is waiting for you on Infinite Bankers, and the Banking Bros are here to host.